Well, I wonder about that journey. The Gospel of Luke doesn't tell us much about it. Basically, he says that Mary and Joseph took a long trip. In fact, it was a very long trip. It's over 100 kilometers from Nazareth to Bethlehem, but given ancient modes of travel and the political and physical barriers that would have been in the way, it probably would have taken them weeks to make that journey. And I gotta wonder, how did Mary manage it? I mean, she had to be somewhere between 8 and 9 months pregnant. How did she manage? And I realize that Christian tradition has very helpfully supplied Mary with a donkey to ride. I mean, it's there, it's in all the stories, all of the artwork I've seen. And that's very nice of tradition to supply that for Mary, though I'm not sure how comfortable a donkey back really is if you're pregnant, but hey. Tradition gives her the donkey. But I noticed that Luke, the author of the Gospel, he doesn't even give a thought to that. He doesn't even give a thought to what Mary needed to make the trip. And he says nothing at all about a donkey. And in fact, he kind of gives me the impression that his assumption is she was on foot the whole way. But however they were traveling, whether on donkey or on foot, how on earth did she manage it? The extra pregnancy weight, the additional nutritional requirements of eating for two, the early labor pains. How did she manage? And it's not just that. Because as she traveled, Mary would have been looking forward to something else, towards the birth of her first child. And for any woman in the ancient world, the birth of a child, especially a first child, was probably about the most dangerous moment of her life. An unthinkable number of women simply didn't survive it. And here was Mary coming to a place she didn't know, where she had no family support, where she wouldn't have even known who the local midwives were, and she was about to give birth in what doesn't sound to me like very sanitary situations. What was she thinking? Was she frightened? She should have been. She should have been terrified. And yet Luke, in his gospel account, tells us nothing about the state of her mind or of her body. Just, they made the trip. They arrived, she had a baby, she laid him in a manger. But really, what else do you expect from Luke, right? He's just a man. What does he know? What does he care about women and what they have to go through? Especially ancient men, what did they care? Surely Luke is no different from any other ancient man in that. Well, perhaps he is. Because actually, there were some ancient men who knew something about what women went through in giving birth. Take the Apostle Paul, for example. Now, Paul, admittedly, by all accounts, was never married, never had any children himself. So you would think that Paul should know nothing at all about childbirth or what a woman had to go through. And yet in our reading this morning from the letter to the Romans, Paul actually talks about exactly that. He talks about the birth pains that a woman had to deal with. Now what he's talking about in our reading this morning is about the trouble of this world. talks about the troubles of our time to the Romans. So he's talking about the fact that in this world there is trouble, there is pain, there is suffering. And he, of course, is talking about the pain of his own particular time and era. But, of course, all of us, I think, can at least sympathize with what he's saying. We look around at the world and we see so much that is not right. And it raises a question. Because you see, Christmas, the coming of Emmanuel, God with us, is supposed to mean a change. It's supposed to mean that God has now decided not to stay at a distance from this world and its troubles. God is no longer simply observing us from a safe heaven, but that in Christ Jesus, God has entered into the struggles and the pain and the suffering of this world. That's what Christmas is about. And you would think that should change something, right? You would think that as a result, the world should become a better place. A place where there is less suffering, less injustice, more kindness. But people were looking around in Paul's own time and were saying, where's the difference? Where's the change? Why is there still so much that is so wrong in the world? It's been decades since Jesus died and rose from the dead. Why aren't things better? And if they were upset, how upset should we be? It hasn't been decades for us, it's been centuries, it's been millennia, and still we look around at the world and there is too much suffering, too much hurt, too much pain. Why? That is the question that Paul is struggling with in our reading this morning. Why so much so wrong in this world? Why so much pain? And the answer, he says, is actually related to the labor pain of woman. The labor pain that women have to go through. This is what Paul says. The whole creation has been subjected to labor pains until now. So he compares the labor pains of a woman going through labor to the struggles of this world. And I know that's weird. I know that's strange. What on earth would Paul know about labor pains? That's what he says. And I want to take him seriously here. I want to think about that for a minute. I don't know where he got his information, but assuming he knows what he's talking about, what does the pain of labor teach us about dealing with what is wrong in our world today? So let's think about that. But let's think about it in terms of the mother about to give birth that we met in the pages of the Gospel of Luke this morning. Let's think of Mary. Mary's whole body shuddered with the pain, and she gave out a long, low moan. She wasn't quite sure how she was doing it, how she was managing to stay on her feet. Well, Joseph went to yet another door to knock and to ask for someone, anyone, and she really didn't care who at this point, to give them a bit of shelter. She didn't care what happened now. She was beyond caring. She didn't care what he found. If she had to lay her newborn baby in a manger, so be it. She'd make it work. Because she only knew one thing. This baby was coming. And he was coming soon, and it was going to hurt a whole lot before he got there. And she could have been feeling sorry for herself. She could have been complaining. In fact, she had a right to complain. She could have been crying out. She had the choicest words that she could say to God, because apparently this whole thing was God's idea. At least if she was to believe what that stranger said 9 months ago. So she could have, and she did, cry out her complaints to God when the pain struck. But she was also seeing something about the pains that she suffered. Because they were not without a purpose. They were leading to something. They were leading to something beautiful, something joyful, a child for her, for Joseph. And what's more, if what that stranger said was true, a child of hope for the whole world. Yes, it was painful, but at least it was leading somewhere. So perhaps she could make it through. Now, Mary also thought not only of her pain, but of the pain that she'd been seeing in the world over the last few weeks. Pain and suffering. Mary thought of the poverty that she saw day by day in her own village of Nazareth. Last dry season, there were children who died because there wasn't enough food to go around. She thought of the terrible things they had seen on their journey. There was a leper colony they passed up in the hill country. Men and women, their bodies literally rotting away. Their spirits already destroyed. They had seen Roman soldiers laughing about the women they had raped. They had seen officials demanding bribes from travelers like them. Over and over, they had seen so much that was so painful and so wrong. And when she had seen it, during their travels, Mary had cried out. She had cried out to God and asked, "Why, O Lord, do you allow these things to happen?" Now here was one thing Mary was learning from going through her labor. It was something that her mother had once taught her, but she hadn't understood until now. She was understanding that when the pain hit her, there was no point. No point in trying to keep it inside. No point in suppressing it, pretending you were stronger than it. If you had to cry out, well, cry out. It helped. It helped you to process the pain. It helped you to get through. Well, Mary was wondering, wasn't that also true about the pain she was observing in the world around her? Was it not also all right to cry out about that? To complain to God about all that is wrong in the world. Mary knew that the Psalms of her people were full of songs of complaint and lament, people crying out to God exactly like that. And she understood now more than ever that that was all right. That God could take it. That God would take it for the sake of His people and for their healing. So that was one thing that Mary was learning through her experience of labor. But then there was the second thing. There was the understanding that she carried with her that this pain she was suffering in her body now had a purpose. It was leading to something. Something good, something beautiful for her, for Joseph, for the whole world. And she was seeing that the sense of purpose to the pain did help her to bear it. Now, was it possible that that was also true of the pain she observed in the world? Was it possible that the creation was subjected to futility? Yes, yes, but not haphazardly, not for no reason, not of its own will, but rather by the will of the one who subjected it, that God had allowed this to happen. There was a purpose to the pain in the world. But what purpose? Only one purpose could be good enough, and that purpose had to be hope. Not of its own will, but by the will of the one who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself might be set free from bondage to decay and will obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. The pain of this world might be bearable because it has a purpose to it. Now, I know there's all kinds of problems with that idea. I know that many people will say to me, that's not good enough. It's not good enough to say, yes, there's pain and struggling in this world, but it's okay, because someday you'll get to look back on it and you'll understand it's all worthwhile. That's not necessarily an acceptable argument to everyone. And that's okay, because I'm not necessarily asking you to accept that argument. If you're suffering with pain, I'm not going to make you accept the argument that that pain has a purpose and therefore it's bearable. What I'm saying, though, is this. I believe that Paul, the apostle, who suffered a great deal because he stood up for what he believed was right, I believe he accepted it. And I believe that Mary, who suffered a great deal, clearly to bring Jesus into the world, but also suffered a great deal because she was the mother of a son to whom terrible things were done. I think she came to believe it as well. Why? Not because it's fair. It's not fair. It is not fair to ask anyone to trade suffering and pain and evil now for the sake of some possible good down the road someday that you might never even see. That's not fair. But you see, this is not a question of fairness, but it is a question of trust. And you see, Paul and Mary and many other people of faith down to the years decided that they could trust the God in whose future they lay, in whose hands the future lay. They chose to trust that God would hold the future. And I suspect that as Mary stood there and dealt with the contractions and dealt with the pain and waited for Joseph to find something, any place, where they could lay down their belongings, she was able to accept it. She was able to accept that the God who had put her in this position would see her through. She was able to trust. And at that point, maybe trust was all she had left, but she discovered that trust was enough. And sometimes, trust is all you have, but it can be enough when you place your trust in God. Take a few moments in silence.